Very excited about this video, guys, and very happy to feature Kazrog on the channel again. Me and Shane, we go way back. I think I was the first one, definitely one of the first ones, to introduce the very first version of K-Clip to a large audience. But they must have known that trying to emulate this particular unit was going to be an ambitious project. The new Kazrog Avalon 747 SP faithfully recreates a legendary unit that is not even available anymore. In fact, I think it was discontinued in 2018. The 747, not to be confused with the 737, another popular Avalon unit, was a staple in many studios, and I'm pretty sure all the original owners still have it and still use it. This high-end and overbuilt unit was mostly known and loved for that equalizer and that super sweet top end. Not only for that, of course. So as soon as I got the plugin, I have to admit, that's the first thing that I checked, and I think they nailed it. Kazrog Avalon 747 SP. Let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to MixFest TV. Hope you guys are having a great day. Before we start, check the info box down below. Now you can buy all the mixing and mastering courses at this email down here. You will also find all the links for plugin discounts and a lot more. If you enjoy the content, of course, subscribe to the channel and consider using the super thanks and support the channel. But if you really want to learn how to mix and master professionally, click the join button down here, become a MixFest TV member and access all the exclusive videos and mix consultations with me. Let's get to the video. All right, while the 747 is a pretty straightforward unit, we have an input tube signal path section, a compressor, and an equalizer. There are definitely a couple of features to notice and learn, namely the sidechain section. But I will also give you a couple of examples on how to use the very peculiar compressor on board of the 747, the EQ, and everything else. So without further ado, let's take a look at the controls and the front panel. First of all, Kazrog gives us two GUI. A black one and the classic original silver one. I'm gonna stay on the black one because I like it more and it's easier on the eyes. So from left to right, we have an input gain. This of course controls the input signal going into the unit and affects of course the compression and the threshold. We have a 10 dB boost button to increase the tube overdrive if the tube signal path is selected with the next button. In fact, the 747 was what they called a twin signal path. You could run it in class A without the tube if you wanted a cleaner sound, or you could add the tube signal path in for more color. Then we have the next switch, which positions the equalizer before the compressor and after if it's not selected. Then we have of course threshold knob, attack and release, fully variable, two sidechain thresholds, one for the lows and one for the high frequencies with their respective frequency selector knobs here at the bottom, a sidechain switch that engages or disengages the internal sidechain, and then a sidechain listen. Now you will have to pay attention when I explain this section because the fact that the sidechain listen is underneath the second threshold, in between the second threshold and the second frequency selector, might confuse some people on how this section works. We're gonna get there in a second. Compression ratio knob, compressor in and out to take the compressor in and out of the path, and then the VU meter, and then our class A program equalizer with 6 graphic bands, 2 top shelves, 3 belts, and a bottom shelf. Very interesting, the frequency choices for these 4 bands. We have the first top shelf at 32K, one of the very first equalizers to go that high. The second one is at 5K, then we have 2K, 500 and 125 for the belts, and then a 15 Hertz shelf. Again, one of the first one to go that low for the bottom shelf. Our signal level LED meter, our output knob, and equalizer in and out. Without further ado, let's hear how it sounds and let's start to explain how it works. And of course, I have to start with the EQ because it's the most impressive thing that they were able to nail that top end. Let's listen to it.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found. Fuck it, I'm a rider till my fucking time's out, so I gotta make it. It's do or die now, and my soul is sainted. Should've been out by now, running out of patience, losing my mind now. Feel like I gotta watch my back, I'm a danger. Used to be homie, some changed up, hard working, now to say look, just caked up. I made up my mind, I gotta get the bag. Shorty, I am not the one, so don't you get attached. And where I am from, it's like we never had. So if I gotta split, then I better half. And I just paint the picture and I ain't never rap. Got my mind on my money, money on my.
Okay, I think we could stop the video here, just go and buy it, and that would be it. I am familiar with the 747, and I actually still use the 747 at Ikari Studio. We still have one of the original units there. So not only I'm familiar, but I'm also fresh. My memory is fresh with it. And that's it. I don't think I need to say anything else. This top end is such a signature sound. And I promise you, we heard it on countless records. This plugin not only gives us that sound for an affordable price compared to the hardware, but it also preserved the heritage of a piece of analog that is not available anymore, unless you buy it on the used market. You heard already that the tube signal path is not a distortion unit. The tube path and the color that the tube path adds, it's extremely subtle. In fact, the 747 was used in mastering. The optocompressor was called Spectral Optocompressor. It's a quite unique design that Avalon had. This unit was all super high voltage and overbuilt, like I said in the beginning. No corners were cut. And probably one of the reasons because it was discontinued, because it was so expensive to build. But the character of the 747 compressor, while a very versatile compressor for being an opto, is that it's very soft and warm. Many people refer to it as pillowy. And some people didn't like it because of that. Of course, it's not for everything, but it's got a quite unique musicality to it. So let's start playing with it.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found. Fuck it, I'ma ride out till my fucking time's out. So I gotta make it. It's do or die now, and my soul is tainted. Should've been out by now, running out of patience, losing my mind now. Feel like I gotta watch my back, I'm in danger. Used to be homie, some changed up, hard working, now to say look, just caked up. I made up my mind, I gotta get the bag. Shorty, I am not the one, so don't you get attached. And where I am from, it's like we never had. So if I gotta split, then I get the better half. And I just paint the picture and I ain't never rap. Got my mind on my money, money on my mind in these streets.
Okay, so this is enough to give you a first idea. Again, extremely musical. It almost hugs the material. It's never jerky, even if, as you can see, I'm using the fastest release because especially on modern music like this, the slow settings can really be slow, almost going into leveler territory. So for example, good for a ballad, not really good for hip hop, good for a slow vocal, and so on. So don't be afraid of using fast release with this compressor because it will never stutter, it will never add unwanted distortion in that regard because it's still not as fast as, for example, a snappy PCA. Slower attacks for this compressor tend to work better, not only on full mixes, but in general, because being a soft compressor, it tends to already rounding off transient, and in my personal opinion, it doesn't really work that well with super fast attacks. And you heard the differences between putting the EQ before or after the compressor. Now, personally, 9 times out of 10, I like the compressor first because again, the compressor, because of the action and the tone of it, tends to round off the material, and the equalizer after lifts up the top end and it opens up the mid-range. So that's my personal preference, is my favorite signal path, but we'll see in some cases you might want to switch. And those cases are when you start using the sidechain threshold. So these two knobs work exactly the same. If you turn the knob clockwise, you will raise the threshold at the frequency selected with its respective frequency selector, or turn it counterclockwise, so have the compressor react more to that frequency. So I'm just gonna engage the low frequency right now, and I'm just gonna do the usual scenario. We want to take some of the low end away from the detector.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found. Fuck it, I'ma ride out till my fucking time's out. So I gotta make it. It's do or die now, and my soul is tainted. Should've been out by now, running out of patience, losing my mind now.
Okay, you see the behavior, right? Without the side chain, and we are again just using the low frequency right now. Without the side chain, the kick triggers the compression and it makes it swing, right? With this engaged, we are raising the threshold at around 190 hertz, so the kick drum and the bass don't trigger the compression that much. Look at the gain reduction here.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found.
Now we have the second sidechain threshold and contour. So if we want the compression to react more to the vocals, we set this one, let's say around 1K, and we do the opposite. We lower the threshold now.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found. Fuck it, I'ma ride out till my fucking time's out, so I gotta make it. It's do or die now, and my soul is tainted. Should've been out by now.
One important thing, when you engage this sidechain button here, both the sidechain thresholds and the frequency selectors are working already. I'm saying this because it can be confusing because the sidechain listen button is underneath the high frequency threshold, and some people might think that you need to engage this one for the second threshold and frequency selector to work. That's not the case. The sidechain in engages both. The sidechain listen simply allows you to monitor what is in the sidechain, so what the compressor is hearing and reacting to.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found.
Okay, this is very, very useful. For example, if you want to focus, and we're going to try this on a vocal, you can use this one almost as a de-esser and just focus.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found. Fuck it, I'ma ride out till my fucking time's out, so I gotta make it. It's do or die now, and my soul is tainted. Should've been out by now, running out of patience, losing my mind now. Feel like.
And in cases like this, if you want to boost the top end, is one of the situations in which you might want to consider putting the EQ before the compression. And I should do this example on a vocal, so we are actually going to do it, but just for the sake of the video, pay attention to the gain reduction now that we are boosting the top end if I put the EQ before the compressor with this sidechain settings.
Ain't no sunshine on this side of town. You could get lost and never be found. Fuck it, I'ma ride out till my fucking time's out, so I gotta make it. It's do or die now, and my soul is tainted. Should've been out by now, running out of patience, losing my mind now.
Okay, I still prefer the EQ after, but that's just my preference, just because this EQ sounds so amazing. But now you should have a good idea on how the signal path works, how the two sidechain threshold work, and the character of the compressor. Let's go and change material. Let's go on a vocal. All right, this vocal is very dynamic, as you can see from the waveform, and it's the perfect example for an Avalon 747. I'm gonna leave the EQ out so we can focus on the character of the compressor right now.
So, before you go, was there something I could have said to make your heart beat better? If only I'd have known you were the storm to weather. So, before you go, was there something I could have said to make it all stop hurting? Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless. So
you hear how soft the knee is and how he hugs the material. Let's focus on this particular part here. Without the compression, listen to how dynamic it is.
was there something I could have said to make it all stop hurting? Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless. So was there something I could have said to make it all stop hurting? Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless. So
here's the thing, it's scary close to the hardware. And especially this last part here, this last blob, without it.
Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless, so. Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless, so.
How it keeps there, that last word. It's just the perfect amount of compression, the perfect type of compression. And here we can help the vocal out with the EQ.
Before you go, was there something I could have said to make your heart beat better? If only I'd have known you were the storm to weather, so. Before you go, was there something I could have said to make it all stop hurting? Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless, so.
That top end is crazy. And right now, for example, this is one of those situations in which I prefer the EQ before the compressor, because I can boost the top end and kind of push the top end into the compressor, so it helps me contain the S's. We can also focus on, for example, those vowels, especially for female vocals when they output a lot of volume. Usually they have a lot of energy in the 1K, 2K range, so we can focus the sidechain to either be less triggered. If you notice that during the performance when they hit that spot, the compressor swing too much and compresses too much, or do the opposite and focus the sidechain on those parts.
Before you go, 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 before you go.
All right, let's keep it there. Let's get out of the sidechain listening.
Before you go, was there something I could have said to make your heart beat better? If only I'd have known you were the storm to weather, so. Before you go, was there something I could have said to make it all stop hurting? Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless, so.
All right, you notice the massive difference, of course, when we engage and disengage the sidechain. So with these two controls, you can really tailor the compressor to react to a specific vowel when we talk about vocals, or of course a specific range when we talk about any other material. But just notice the difference.
Before you go, was there something I could have said to make it all stop hurting? Kills me how your mind can make you feel so worthless, so.
Very cool, because remember, this is an opto compressor, so usually they are not that versatile. Another classic application for the 747 was bass, so let's try that. All right, this is a compressor that you will rarely hear pumping or having the kind of snappiness and nervous release of a FET or a VCA. Instead, is the perfect compressor for something like bass, so longer audio events, to just keep everything contained and bring up the low-level information in a, I don't want to say transparent way, but kind of, because you don't really hear the action of the compressor too much. You hear the end result, which is more compact. Let's do acoustic guitar and let's play with the EQ a little more. Alright, you saw me, I just quickly set up my sidechain to focus on the top end. Again, very similar to the bass. And with acoustic guitar, especially with strumming, it's very hard to find a compressor that doesn't jerk like this every single time the player hits the strings a little more. This is pretty perfect. You heard it. That's one of the reasons because it was so loved. Because no matter what kind of material you feed to it, it stays musical. And I am using fast releases. You can go ahead and, for example, on something like this, you can use it almost as a leveler, so having the material always under the curve of the compression and with the release slow. Extremely musical. It keeps the entire performance under the curve, and the EQ in this case helps tremendously cleaning up that excess low, mid-range, and lows. And again, that top end is just magical. Before we go, I just want to do another example on a full mix, because this is, again, despite the success of this unit, an underrated unit for mastering.
Yo, them are some big pretenders, so me take away myself from them. Take away myself from them. Ulterior agenda, so me take away myself from them. Take away myself from them. Bad vibes sender, me take away myself from them. Take away myself from them. Man, I go like we no member, but them devious ways that me defi condemn. Well, me no care if a friend or so-called brothers. Me find out, say them know how we climb up the ladder. Flip out with them again, me nah go bother. Link up with clean-hearted strangers on me radar. In a me territory, me nah make them chadia. Cause enough of them are thief and robber.
That top end is pretty crazy. And again, this shows you that if you tailor the side chain, even the compressor, which some people find too soft or too slow, can totally be used for a full mix or mastering purposes. And I think this is it for this video. Generally impressed with the Kazrog Avalon 747, but not surprised because Kazrog make awesome stuff. The link to it is gonna be in the info box down below. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Like the video and you want to support the channel, use the super thanks, and of course, become a member to access the exclusive videos or buy all the individual mixing and mastering courses at this email. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay safe. See you next time.
Hands on my neck, hands grip my throat. Lift me up.